morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Normally it would be an F3 Friday, but it is the Huddle here, and we are live at 9 o'clock a.m. Central, 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. And welcome back. We were live last Friday with an amazing show. But before we get to that, I'm excited to announce who I am. Welcome. I am Faith Suggs, your host and co-host of Faith Family Focus, but the main host of Here with the Huddle. We are live every Friday at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern, where we bring on an awesome guest each show. So far, we've had amazing guests so far. We're up to our episode 9 with an amazing guest today. But our goal within the Huddle is to bring everyone in and share, our life stories, any adversity we have faced, and also how we overcome it. And, the goal of us leaving the Huddle within 50 to 60 minutes is that we grew not just as a guest, not just as me as a host, but also as you as viewers. So really excited to have you join us today. Take the time to share the show. We're going to have an awesome story shared today. To talk a little bit about last show, we had Anne-Marie Nitty, former model and now aspiring author, come with us to talk about not just her experience with modeling and working within Manhattan, New York, for 10 years, a decade of professional modeling, which was amazing to hear her stories with that. Talking about body image and talking about, youth business and learning entrepreneurship from a young age, but also diving into the social media era that we're all in right now and how, this generation that's growing up through college now is starting to view social media in a way that we need to learn as adults. And how to prioritize living in the moment instead of living through digital media. And it was an amazing conversation. And Anne-Marie, touched on some amazing points. And I'm very excited for her book to come out within the next couple of years as she's just finished and going into editing now. So if you have not seen the show, feel free to scroll down. We'll show an excerpt before we dive into our next guest as well. But what a wonderful Friday. What a wonderful, great. We're heading into November. We are on our second week of November almost. It's amazing that we're almost there. I feel like Christmas is right around the corner. For those of you who are new to the show, welcome. We are on E360 TV. Our normal platform is Faith Family Focus, which is hosted and co-hosted by my father, Schaefer Suggs, former NFL player with the New York Jets and the Cincinnati Bengals, and has served as VP and an executive board for the RPFPC out of Chicago. We are live Monday and Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, we share our favorites from season 1, but we had an awesome show on Monday with Paul Fraze, and we talked about, his amazing family story with their young son, Joshua, in the foundation where they raise money for his former disease. We lost Joshua actually before he made it to his 16th birthday. And the story of their family and what they have gone through and what they have persevered and if you have not seen it, check it out now because it just was very amazing. And I know we had a lot of viewers tune in for that one, and so many people came away just completely blown away about, the lack of education we have towards any form of disability within the youth, but for sure within muscular myopathy. So wonderful, wonderful show today. We have Abby Dunkin joining us. But before we get to her, I want to show a quick excerpt of Friday's show with Anne-Marie Nitty. And you guys let me know what you think. You evolve.
I hope we'll get past it because I think we're all feeling this burnout and this exhaustion of, look, I don't want to perform every day, And I see it in the younger generations. Like you said, your brother doesn't have social media. Our 16-year-old daughter, she has social media, but she's not obsessed with it. She doesn't post a lot. She doesn't, I think that our generation is actually worse with that, which is kind of ironic. So I hope that we get to this place where it's like, look, I don't want to film the damn party. I want to exist in it. I want to experience it. I want to have this time with my friends rather than create this content that is really superfluous and means nothing.
Yeah. I love the show. Annie, if anybody's ever met Annie and been around her or Anne-Marie, she's Annie to us. If anybody's ever met her energy and her beautiful family, and she's recently gotten married. She had her 3rd year anniversary with her husband, and she has brought in 3 daughters. She's become a stepmother. And so if you ever met her energy, it just extremely screams womanhood, it screams sisterhood, it screams friendship and community. And it's just an amazing show that we had on Friday. So if you missed it, feel free to scroll down or go to E360 TV and type in the Huddle. But don't leave us now. We have an amazing show. To give you a quick rundown of who our wonderful guest is, Abby Dunkin. I actually ran across her Twitter Maybe a while ago. Life is flying by, but we had a lot of mutual connections, and I got to follow her story a little bit while she was actually still playing. So Abby Dunkin is a 2016 Rio Paralympic gold medalist in wheelchair basketball. After being named to the 2020 Tokyo team, she decided to retire due to postponement of the games to focus on her health. Abby now lives in North Carolina, and we'll talk about that today, and works as a sports performance coach in Raleigh, North Carolina. So after this quick break, good morning, everyone, we will dive into Abby's story, and we'll get to meet her a little bit. Good morning, Abby. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're on episode 9, if you hadn't heard, but we have an amazing guest so far, so I'm very appreciative that you joined us today.
Of course. No, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, so where are you right now? I know we talked a little bit offline, but for our viewers, where are you and what are you up to?
So I'm currently living in Cary, North Carolina. So I actually just moved here from Texas a little over a year ago. So there's trees here. It gets below 60. It's a totally different world than what I grew up with. But so I'm working as a sports performance coach in Raleigh, primarily with youth athletes. So I've been doing that for a little bit. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at now.
Yeah. So let's talk about where you're from originally.
Originally, I grew up in New Braunfels, Texas.
Okay. Where is
in between San Antonio and Austin.
Okay. So do you know Kyra Lambert? I know you guys are connected on Twitter.
Yeah, we actually played against each other in high school and middle school a little bit. So we had some mutual friends. But yeah, we knew each other back when.
Yeah, Kyra's the best. Actually, she blew up my phone this morning with every Bible scripture she can think of. She's an awesome person.
Oh, she is awesome.
Yes, she is. She has such a great energy. She's actually been on the show a couple times. Not the Huddle yet, because she's over in Turkey right now, balling it out. But
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, she's been on Faith Family Focus, so she's been killing it for sure. So I'm excited to have her on eventually. But another mutual friend, of course. So talk to us a little bit. Okay, so you're from Texas. Talk to us about your family. Give us a rundown about your childhood, your background a little bit, so we can kind of figure out, how this made you who you are.
Yeah, so I was actually born over in Rota, Spain. My dad's former military. He was a fighter pilot. So I grew up, well, not really grew up, but lived over there for about 2 to 3 years. And then my family moved to Arizona and then lived there for about a year or two, and then to Texas. And so where I grew up from like 99 up and then went to college at University of Texas at Arlington. Played there for 5 years. But yeah, Texas has always been home. That's the place I grew up. My family, my dad lives in Dallas. He's a pilot for American Airlines. And my mom and my stepdad both live in Georgia. So that's basically me in a little bit of a nutshell in Texas.
Yeah. Would you say that, you've lived all over and you've lived in, completely different kind of spaces, from Spain to Texas. If anybody knows Texas, they know it's completely different anywhere else in this country as well. Talk to us a little bit. How did, not only coming from a military background, let's touch on that, which Kyra is as well. But let's touch a little bit on how did that kind of impact, how you grew up a little bit?
So, I mean, literally since I was born, my dad was always gone on deployments, on flights, all that kind of stuff. And actually, he retired. Then back in 2005, he reenlisted with the Marine Corps and was actually deployed over to Iraq back in 2006, 2007. So at the time, it didn't really make sense to me. I think I was like 5th grade at the time. And so I just thought he was going to take a really long vacation overseas. It didn't really hit with me.
Yeah.
Until the day that he was deployed. And I remember it was actually in San Antonio, BAMC, and seeing all the news media crews everywhere and everybody's crying and the white bus is coming to pick everybody up. And I think that's when it really hit. And so it was always my mom, myself, and my sister. We always joke that we're kind of like the Three Musketeers. So he was deployed for about a year. Fortunately, came back in '07, and then returned to American Airlines. But military household, it's very like that. My grandfather was a colonel in the Marine Corps as well.
Wow.
And so my family is very military since day one, but very structured. But my mom has always been the MVP to hold the kind of the glue together.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's amazing. Well, I should say happy old happy belated Veterans Day to you and your family at the end of the day, because we say it to our veterans, but to the families that surround these men and women. I mean, the courage, the bravery, the sacrifice of time, it's just it's admirable for sure. So happy former Veterans Day. But so you talk about discipline, you talk about that, but did you have to grow up early? Would you feel that impacted, your maturity? Because your sister's younger or older than you?
She is actually 14 months younger than I am.
So close.
Yeah.
So would you say you both had to grow up a little quickly?
I would say so. Yeah, definitely. I remember for both of us, we would have to go to these meetings on base, and we would just have these random people tell us how to cope, and we didn't really understand what we were coping with that, because it still wasn't registering with us. And then having counseling sessions at school and stuff like this to make sure that we were okay with our dad being overseas, and getting up about an hour earlier than we usually do to make sure we write our emails or letters into our dad through some website that we'd use. And yeah, so it was a different way of life for about a year. But now looking back, huge major props to my mom for being the backbone, for being the MVP for so long, especially in a time like that of uncertainty, and then raising two kids super close in age, going 4th, 5th grade at the time. But yeah, it definitely shaped how we grew up. And then I think it definitely made us grow up a little bit faster.
Yeah. So a little background on myself is that my brother and I, we are 4.5 years apart. I literally copy and paste of each other. If you ask anybody, we lost our mom in 2010, I believe. Dad, you're watching. You can edit or correct me, but we lost her, and so my dad became a single father early, with a 14-year-old and an 8-year-old. And so what we learned at that time is sometimes life just makes you grow up. Right. And sometimes you don't realize it, but as you become an adult, and me at 24, I'm learning more and more how much going through adversity and going through, those times where it seems like you don't know you're going through something hard in the moment. You know what I mean? You think it's hard, what you're going through is no one else would honestly wish to be a part of. But you don't know because, you're just living life. But as you become an adult, you really do see the impact it had, on your development and on who you became. And I do think it made you tougher. You know what I mean? Your story is amazing, but definitely stuff like that made me tougher. And, it's like a hidden blessing, you know what I mean? Like a silver lining with it and all,
100%. Yeah. So you don't really realize the impact or what actually is happening until much later down the road. And you're like, oh, wow. Okay. That was a big life struggle or a life adversity or life situation. And then you learn to appreciate the little things.
Yeah.
Later down the road, for sure.
Yeah. Especially in your situation, I'm sure you now view like who you are as a woman in general, and who you are as a coach, and who you are as a mentor to others. I'm sure that all of that comes through how you treat others and everything. So, silver linings, like I said, and blessings, and it really did impact you. So talk to us a little bit about, as a kid, what was your experience with team activities and school and sports and all of that?
So sports, obviously loved basketball. That was my passion growing up. Loved it. I was actually also a secondary black belt in martial arts. I trained a little bit in MMA and that stuff too growing up. I basically did everything that I could. I remember when I was a kid, my first basketball goal in the driveway, I just thought it was awesome. And now I'll be out there from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. putting up the shots as many as I can until my mom would yell at me to come back inside before it gets too dark. That's what I spent all my time doing. I was always outside, always shooting baskets or doing whatever I could. And so I didn't really actually play club until middle school. So it's kind of a late bloomer in that sense. But yeah, so a lot of basketball, a lot of martial arts, and then stuck with basketball obviously through high school, and then wheelchair basketball, and the rest is history.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about how you got involved with wheelchair basketball. I will say this, in Chicago, we had a wheelchair basketball team within, and we had a Paralympic organization right around the corner from me. We're in Flossmoor, Illinois. I don't know a lot of people know this, but we, Elena Deladon and those used to come back and actually work with, the wheelchair basketball team and those with disabilities. And it was just amazing actually experience to kind of be able to see, which not a lot of people see, especially in high schools. They have no visibility to it until, you actually turn the TV on to see the Olympics. So talk just a little bit about how you got involved in that and, that part of your story.
Yeah, so in 2008, I had sprained my ankle and tore my meniscus at the same time. But we didn't realize I tore my meniscus until like 2 months later, to where my knee was like triple the size. And so had surgery for that, and then went through the whole rehab process. And it was back when you have the leg brace from your hip down to your ankle, and it's like the Velcro. Yeah. And so went through the rehab process of that. Everything was fine, but then the pain just never went away like it was supposed to. And then we had a doctor mention that, hey, you might have CRPS, which stands for Complex Regional Pain Syndrome. So CRPS is a chronic pain disorder. For instance, if say you break your ankle, and obviously it's going to hurt, and your brain is going to send this pain signal saying, hey, I'm in pain. With CRPS, once the injury heals, your brain just never stops sending the signals. It just doesn't know when to stop. So basically, you're in that same physical pain for no reason. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that pain went from my left leg to my right leg, went from my lower back down, and my legs would turn different colors. They would swell up randomly. I couldn't be in water. I couldn't wear jeans. It was just really weird.
Yeah.
And after showers, my legs would even turn purple, like orange spots. And so I try to stay away from all the medications and the doctors and surgeries and like that type of stuff. And so we had found a rehab program up in Pennsylvania, and it's about 2 weeks long. You go through a lot of physical therapy, occupational therapy, a little bit of psychology, for 8 hours a day, to help reverse the pain signals and basically tell your brain, hey, you can actually walk, you can run, you can squat, you can do all these things,
right,
and you shouldn't be in pain. And so at that time, I think I was about in the 8th grade.
Okay.
And so from then on, like I went into this program not being able to climb stairs during passing periods because of other kids bumping into me. So I had to take the elevator. And this program, I went in at that status and then was able to leave running about 3 to 5 miles. So I still had a little bit of the chronic pain, but I was able to manage it on my own through sport, through team sports, and through exercise. And then my junior year of high school came, and we were at a tournament somewhere in San Antonio. And I remember just bawling because my uniform hurt to put on. And it was cold, and none of my coaches knew what to do. I didn't know what to do. And so there's a picture somewhere of me sitting on the bench wrapped up in like the small Gatorade towels, just shivering in so much pain. And so at that point, we knew that it was time for a change of direction and something to help with that. And so I went to a neurologist and was put on my first prescription. And a few days later, my mom found me in the corner of the kitchen looking up with my eyes glossed over, and I was drooling, my head tilted like this, and she thought I was having a stroke. And it just turned out it was from the side effects of that medication. So fast forward a few months later, I went in for a lumbar nerve block. And so lumbar nerve block, they basically take a needle about like this long, and they inject an anesthetic in your back to help with that chronic pain. And so long story short, it didn't go as planned.
Right.
And during the procedure, my whole body actually jumped off the table into like a full body muscle spasm.
Wow.
And I had to come in, have extra nurses come and hold me down while they redid it. And so I was with it. They didn't give me a lot of anesthetic, I guess. So I still remember it, and I just remember something being off. And then for about a month, I walked with a limp. And then we found this treatment called Calmare. It has really high success rates. It's great for chronic pain. It just didn't go as planned for me. And so they take these electrodes about like this big, and they put it on the outside or outskirts of your pain. So for me, it was like all over my shoulders, my upper back, my arms. And you're hooked up to this machine for an hour a day for 2 weeks, 5 days a week. And it feels like somebody's taking like a tattoo needle and going constantly, and then taking a rubber band every 2 seconds and pulling it back. It was the weirdest feeling. But going into this doctor's appointment or for this treatment, the doctor said, okay, if you really care about your health, you will never drink caffeine, you will never play basketball, and you will never get tattoos. Obviously, I love Starbucks. It's the holidays. The sugar cookie almond drink is my favorite. I got like 6 or 7 tattoos now, and obviously still play basketball. So that obviously went very well. And so I remember just feeling super distraught. One, having this random guy telling me, no, you can't play basketball. No, you can't do this. Oh, and you also can't do that either. And at this point, I was about to head into my senior year of high school. This was like a week after our playoff game. And so basically, like, okay, what's going on? And so the first week of this treatment, I remember feeling super tired and super sick. And I actually ended up losing like 30 pounds within a 2-week span. The second week, I got up one morning and fell over in the hotel room because I couldn't walk. And at the same time, I kept a medical blog on CaringBridge because it was such a new treatment that I had outreach of people wanting to know how I was going. So I just kept kind of a blog online. And one day I got a random call from this medical facility saying, hey, is this your doctor? I was like, yeah, how'd you know? And we came across your blog online. You need to be careful. We've had patients come out of there in wheelchairs.
Wow.
Yeah. And so long story short, left about a day or two early and came back with using a wheelchair to get around. And at that point, I had never met, especially at that time, a smaller town in Texas. I didn't know anybody with a disability. I didn't know anybody that used a wheelchair. And I didn't know anybody that was only physically disabled. Because when we think of disability a lot, especially the Paralympics and Special Olympics, we tend to tie the two together when they're two separate things. And so that in my mind, that's what I was doing too, because I just didn't know. And so going from 2 feet to 2 wheels was something I never really anticipated. And nobody's really ever ready for.
Right.
And so with all the prescriptions and all this type of stuff, it was hard to accept that for myself and letting sports and basketball become who I was, not what I did. And so when you strip that away, you're thinking, oh my God, okay, now what do I do? Who am I?
Yeah.
And also knowing that I was a burden financially with my parents and friends and school. With prescription pills, I ended up overdosing one night. That was my way of throwing in the towel. That was it. I had set my alarm for 2:22 in the morning, no idea why. And then got up, went to the kitchen, at that point, we're like a at-home Walgreens with all prescriptions we had. Yeah. Found one, went back to my room, and I remember staying in the bathroom. I could see my silhouette in the mirror and then just feeling the tears run down my face. And then one by one, threw the bottle away, and then went back to bed and closed my eyes and thought, okay, I'm going to go back to sleep. This is it. And then within 10 seconds, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, what did you just do?
Yeah.
I just had this gut feeling of like, okay, this is not who you are. This is not where you're supposed to be. And that there is so much more out there. You just don't know it yet. And I remember at this point, it was like 2:35, I think. And I think I had more guilt in getting up to go wake my mom up to tell her what I had just done than actually doing the act itself.
Yeah.
That was something a lot harder than I definitely thought. So telling my mom at like 3 a.m., hey, I remember just feeling so much guilt and I was scared.
Yeah.
And at that point, my parents' relationship wasn't the best, so my dad was also in another room. We had told him what just happened and that we're going to go to the hospital. And he just said, he kind of laughed and said, okay, I'm back to sleep. And so my mom, MVP backbone, like I've said, we go to the hospital, drink this god awful liquid charcoal, get out of my system. And then the next morning, that was basically me hitting my rock bottom. And
Right.
I've always viewed it as once you hit that rock bottom, the only way you can go is up. There is no lower you can get than that. And so that was kind of my wake up call. Like, hey, there's more. This is not the end of the road.
How old were you at this time?
I was 17 or 18.
17.
I think.
17. Before we dive in, even when we talk about rock bottom, we talk about we've all had a rock bottom. Yours, of course, is unique to you. And what I can't help but ask and think about is when we talk about kids who are facing chronic pain or chronic, just these are hurdles that normal kids don't have to go through, right? And society doesn't even, we're still getting better. But when we talk about those with disabilities, talk about those who at the end of the day are not the normal child who we invest money in, how we build schools with stairs, all the types of things that goes into life when we're building stuff. Where is the patient advocacy for mental health? You know what I mean? How at that time were the resources provided? We talked about they provided counseling and resources for you as a child of military.
Mm-hmm.
But when you were going through all of this, were there any resources presented for your mental health within this?
At the time, my mom was very encouraging of going to go see somebody.
Okay.
And so I had one counselor who, when it comes to finding a good therapist, you got to find somebody that you mesh well with.
Yes.
The first one, not so much, but the second one I had, I liked a lot. And so it was actually during that process of while I was seeing somebody.
Okay.
But yeah. But also at the same time, going through all of that, I'm also struggling because I was in the closet too.
Right.
And being in a small town in Texas, you're balancing 2 feet to 2 wheels, and also being part of the LGBT community, not knowing how to balance life out.
Yep.
But yeah, it was definitely rock bottom. But like I said, the only way you can go is up from there.
Exactly. And you know what? You're balancing so much. And like I said, strength comes from literally all of this, because I will say that you have figured it out to this point. I don't know how you did it. I am amazed and I am admiring just your journey, because I've been through some stuff. But the fact that, everybody's trauma and adversity and hard times are different from everybody else, right? And as human beings, we're just now waking up to acknowledging that everybody's experiences and journeys are different from our own. And because they are different and different from ours, we have to learn to accept and support in the way that they need it to be done. And I think that you as a 17, 18-year-old, shout out to your mother, because she didn't have the answers, right? No one had the answers for all this. You were writing a blog trying to find the answers. So I'm just so admiring of your mom at that time, just, rolling with the punches with you, because it's not easy being a mom or a parent trying to navigate that. So go ahead and continue the story. Where did we find basketball? Because I know that probably was the awakening moment, the lift.
Yeah, and definitely the scariest thing is the unknown, is just not knowing what's going on, what's going to happen, what's going to be the end all, what's going to go from here. And so within a few months, actually a few weeks of that incident, I was on YouTube and found wheelchair basketball.
Okay.
And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. I thought, man, their arms are jacked, like they're hitting everybody on the court. And it was game film from the London 2012 Paralympic Games. And I just remember thinking, oh, I got to try that. And so my dad also being former military, first time I ever tried it out was down in San Antonio at Fort Tim Houston, with guys that had just come back from their deployment, getting used to their new injuries that they had sustained overseas. And so I come in as like this 17-year-old scrawny white girl, not knowing what she's doing, with these guys who are like twice my size, learning the game, but absolutely loved it. And so from there, I was invited to go watch a practice. A lot of NBA teams also have their own wheelchair teams.
Okay.
And so like San Antonio Spurs have a San Antonio Parasport Spurs wheelchair basketball team.
Wow.
And so it's a team made up of majority veterans that I was able to go watch a practice. And then watching that practice turned into, hey, we're going to put you on the team. Come out and practice. And so it was awesome, but I also took that as a sign of like, okay, am I going to be in this wheelchair forever? If I'm taking this step toward playing a wheelchair sport, is this me giving up on walking? Is this like, what is this? But I absolutely love the game. Those guys became like my second family, like my brothers, and they taught me everything that I knew. And everything just happened so fast. And within a few months of that, I recruited to go play at University of Texas at Arlington. And so they had just started a brand new team, and I was so fortunate enough to go be a part of that. And so played there for 5 years. But going into my freshman year of college, we were at a summer camp there, and I remember shooting around, and this guy came up to me and was like, hey, would you be interested in going to a development camp? And I had no idea who he was. At that point, I still don't really know many people. Yeah. And later found out he was a USA assistant coach for the national team, and they're having a USA development camp within like 2 months. And he was like, hey, we'll pay your way. Why don't you just come out, kind of get your foot in the door, get to know everybody. I was like, yeah, sure. Okay. No clue what you're talking about. Yeah, I'll do it. And so went, met everybody, loved it, learned so much. And then fortunate enough to literally a few weeks later, get a formal invite to try out for the USA national team for 2015. And at the time, head coach Stephanie Wheeler, I was so new that I thought there was another athlete named Abby as well. And so I thought she emailed the wrong Abby. I was like, hey, I don't think you understand. I just started. I don't know what, like, are you good? So went to the first tryouts, really just trying to be a sponge and soak in everything from all the coaching staff and all the players. And my first time at the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. So I was just kind of like a little kid in a candy store. Right. But very fortunate enough to make that first team. And so played 2015. We won gold at Parapan American Games in Canada, and then made my first Paralympic team in 2016, where we also won gold. And then just retired last year.
You know, it's amazing. No, first of all, not everybody gets a gold medal, so let me point that out. So congratulations on that for sure. That's amazing. So the Paralympic, first of all, I watched a wheelchair basketball this year. Normally try to watch as much as I could, but this year, like that was normally what I always caught on TV, and I was like, okay, this is a sign I gotta watch it. And so I started watching it more and more, and I was like, they go so hard. Like, I was like, do they not ever jam their fingers? Like, it is so crazy cool. Like, I was like so impressed, and I was like, I would watch this live. I need to watch this live. Talk to us a little bit about your experience in Rio. Like, just, you know, that's like a once in a lifetime. Like, not everybody gets to experience that. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So, especially if you're ever able to watch the game live, when you walk into a gym, it smells like burning rubber, and it's a lot more. It seems a lot more hard contact and fierce and aggressive in person than it is on TV. But Rio was awesome. That was really my first big international tournament, especially coming from, again, New Braunfels, Texas, where it's not incredibly diverse. So going to an area where I'm with so many other athletes and people of different disabilities, different countries, different cultures, different religions, different skin color, it was like, whoa, this is so cool. And it was really cool that the only thing there that united us was sport. And I thought that was a pretty neat thing. Actually, there was one over in the Olympic and Paralympic Village, trading pins is like currency over there. So you try to like see the pins you can get from each country. And so my teammate and I were in the dining hall, and we saw a team from, I think it was Iran, women's sitting volleyball. And we want to go trade pens, see if they want a USA pen. We want to get an Iran pen. And I mean, we're obviously like decked out in all USA gear, and we go out to him like, hey, you want to trade pens? And one of them was like, yeah, sure. And then 4 others just had their head down the entire time, like not giving us any attention and no acknowledgement. Thought was kind of weird. And she looked at us and then looked back down. And then one of them looked at us again and said, you're from America. You're from USA. People like you don't like us. And it took me back, and I was like, I don't like thinking in my head, like, what? I don't even know you. But then all the news, all the media, social media at that time, I was like, oh, like we're here at the biggest tournament in sports. And yeah, for that was a sad moment in that instant. And being also, I think I was like 19, 20, I didn't know what to say. I was like, I don't know, like, I don't know anything about you. But then one of them was wearing Steph Curry basketball shoes. And I was like, oh man, I love your shoes. That's awesome. And then that got her smiling. And then we all became friends. We were able to find like some connections and follow each other on Instagram and stuff like that, and kept up with each other's games and records. And that was one moment within Rio that I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so much bigger than the gold medal game. This is so much bigger than basketball. This is so much bigger than sport. So being with so many people from so many different perspectives was really, really cool. But then again, winning gold was also cool too.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, that was one moment that really I probably will never forget, for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. You think about all these perspectives, and you also think about all these religions and these ways of life in general, especially when we talk about, Middle Eastern culture and dynamic completely behind it, and how we are taught to view it as Americans is a certain way. And then, you are jumping these hurdles and going face to face with people that a lot of Americans, unless they actually travel there, they don't get to do. And so you had an amazing once in a lifetime experience right there. And not just meeting someone from Iran, but meeting a woman from Iran. And you know what I mean? Just having that, the things that comes behind that culturally. Just what an amazing experience. Talk to us a little bit about your mental. Who were you during this time? Like, how did you start to feel? Like, did you feel growth? Did you feel like coming into your own a little bit during this time?
Oh, 100%. So I felt like I was finally learning what the world has to offer.
Nice.
I was finally outside of my small box that I grew up with, and people that I only knew because I was there. And so being in such an environment like Rio where you're around everybody, and that was really cool. So I felt like I was finally starting to grow up a little bit and be a little bit more enlightened to who and what's around me. And so that really helped shape who I was, continue my career, and even away from basketball and away from the court. But yeah, so I'm forever grateful for everything that the game has brought me.
Yeah, sometimes you got to take yourself away from what you're comfortable with and what you're used to. And that means your hometown. That means your community, those faces you see every day, to realize who you really can be and who you're supposed to be. And I think that you got an awesome experience, not just, traveling and being on an international stage, but also just stepping outside of, the normal norm of sports, right? When we talk about Paralympic,
Exactly.
the entire community of Paralympic Games and just the experience and the people you meet has to be, one, so non-judgmental and opening and understanding, and you learn and meet all these different type of stories, right? We talk about playing with veterans is a completely different dynamic than your story, right? And you know what I mean? Comparing with anybody you've met. It just has to be an awesome experience in that terms. What is your favorite part of like just the Paralympic community? And you're still you're sports performance coach in it now. What about it do you think brings to sports in comparison to just regular basketball or regular sports,
Yeah, the one thing, especially when I did go to UT Arlington, was that sports do not discriminate. Nobody cares who you are, what you pray for, who you love, what you do outside. As long as you can play ball, that's all that matters. And so, especially going through my career, is knowing that sports don't discriminate. It's the people that discriminate. It's the people that put these guidelines and these walls and barriers up. And sport was never intended to do that. And so that was definitely one of the biggest things I've learned. But yeah.
Sports never discriminates. And it's always welcoming to whoever, whatever, wherever, whatever financial background, no matter what, it'll make a way. If you take time and invest into it, it'll take care of you for sure. So, we talk about you coming to your own, you finding your identity, you're finding, you starting to bounce back. Rock bottom seems 70 pages ago at this time. Talk just a little bit about like your sexuality, coming into like that woman, standing in your space, like in standing out and like puffing your chest up in a way. Talk to us a little bit about like that experience for you.
Yeah, so I was so lucky to have a head coach at the time, Stephanie Wheeler, who was publicly out. Is definitely one of the greatest coaches. Is actually from North Carolina.
Nice.
Now she's the head coach at University of Illinois. And so seeing her be her authentic self and being so successful at the same time, I was like, man, if she can do that, then why can I? So she is definitely one of the biggest role models I had and still have, as I was able to find myself and grow as a person on and off the court. And so having her there was pretty cool. And so through my career, finding organizations like Athlete Ally, that I've been fortunate enough to be an athlete ambassador for, and they've done so much work to combat homophobia and transphobia on and off the competitive field of play. And so it's been awesome to work with them and see them do so much great work around the world. But yeah, it's been pretty cool.
Yeah. When you talk about Athlete Ally, talk to people a little bit. I know what it is, but talk to the people, give the rundown on what it is and kind of how people can get involved or learn more about it.
Yeah, so Athlete Ally has a ton of awesome athlete ambassadors, including Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird, Ashton Harris, Algie Krieger, and all those people. And so they do a lot of work with different companies, organizations, even universities and colleges to promote equality among the level field of competitive play. And so they have done a lot way back when, they're doing a lot now, and I cannot wait to see the work that they do continuing forward. So you can find them on Instagram, they got a website, Twitter, social media, so they're all up on there.
Yeah. So you being from Texas, right, and you're now in North Carolina. Those of no Raleigh, Durham area, they know kind of it's a lot more progressive than a lot of places in North Carolina. Being from Texas and experiencing growing up in a small town in Texas, and everything that Texas is throwing out into the news right now, right, and everything circling around it. Talk to us a little bit about coming from a background of LGBT, right, and an Athlete Ally. Let's talk a little bit about, the trans youth in sports. And for those of you who don't know, the rights in Texas for trans youth to play sports and decide which sport they want to play and how they want to identify is always up for question and almost an impossible process for young transgender children. Talk to us a little bit about, your opinion on it, your experience within it, and what you think maybe needs to happen in order for those kids to feel comfortable in their own space.
Yeah, first of all, it is so sad to see that trans athletes not be able to play their sport that they love and have life-saving access to it. For some athletes, this is their outlet. These are their teams that they go with and they vent to and they bond with. And now you have people in Texas want to take or have taken that away and don't see that as value. It's heartbreaking. There's a lot of things going on in Texas that are heartbreaking. It's hard to put into words. Everything Texas is doing right now, especially coming from New Braunfels, where the city, or I guess close to San Marcos, where I know they've been in the news quite a bit as far as politics and former administration and stuff like that. But trans athletes definitely deserve access to sport. Like I said, sports do not discriminate. You have people in government that have no experience, no ties, no personal connections, that are so freely and willingly taking away sports and athletics to 0.0001% of athletes in Texas. And you will never see a student athlete identify with the opposite gender just to gain advantage or win a competition. That is just completely unheard of. So I really hope in the future it's revisited. and it's reversed. Because they all deserve the sport, they deserve the love, just as we all do. And so at the end of the day, we're just all human beings, and the only thing we want is to feel loved and accepted for who we are, what we do, everything in between. And so when we don't get that, or not feeling that love and acceptance, that's when things start to get a little bumpy.
Yeah. And you think about the mental health, like these kids are trying to figure out who they are, right? And they're trying to, not only that, but they're also trying to be regular teenagers. They're trying to be regular young adults. And we all know that's hard enough as it is, period. But when you add on, trying to figure out how they want to identify and get people to believe them. And often sometimes they don't have the support behind them when we talk about family or even just schools, especially in Texas. And you take away sports, and sports is never black and white. Like, sports can't be black and white, right? Like, sports has so many different layers to it. When we talk about the people, we've been talking about it, who participate in sports, right? Like I said, it doesn't matter what socioeconomic, doesn't matter what color you are, doesn't matter how you identify, doesn't matter how sexuality you are. When you step on the court, you step on the field, like, no one cares. Right? It's friendship, it's sisterhood, It's brotherhood. It's just what sports brings to the table. It teaches you how to work as a team. And so when you take away that space, like that safe space for these kids, you're basically telling them we don't care about how you cope, right? With everything life is throwing at you. And to me, that to me is the ultimate, like, okay, now I know you're really disconnected from what's going on in this world, regardless of what you believe in or not. Like, you have to understand that how people feel and what they want to be loved and all that type of stuff matters when we talk about how they feel mentally. And yeah, that to me is my biggest thing, because sports really is not black and white. You can't make it black and white. It'll never be black and white. And so, no, thank you for touching on that for sure, because a lot does need to get done. And that just comes with education. It comes with more voices like yours, more voices like Athlete Allies, speaking up and sharing their stories and their, experiences, trying to advocate for themselves, because that's kind of like what this is all about. You're teaching people, to advocate for themselves. But one last question before we dive in. Now that you're a mentor, now that you are, in the coaching position, what is one thing from your own experience, from your journey up to this point, that you are constantly trying to relay to the youth of tomorrow?
Just do whatever makes you happy. Yeah. I mean, life is too short to spend worrying about little stupid things like at school or with friends or whatever happens. Just do whatever makes you happy. And then just truly just be yourself. Yeah. Because there's nobody that can be a better you than you. Yeah. And you'll never, ever, ever get that time back. So actually my partner and I were talking about like how kids now, I feel like we're starting to create a more open world. And so where these kids are able to come out and speak out and be themselves. And way back when, especially growing up in Texas, not feeling like you're able to do that and feeling the backlash, especially in a town where there's a church on every corner and people are just throwing Bibles at you and with hammers. And it's a totally different world now. And I hope we can keep progressing that. But just do whatever makes you happy and just keep being you.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, Abby, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm going to let you go dive back into, saving the youth of tomorrow. But I appreciate you for joining us this Friday morning, and we hope to see you soon.
Perfect. Thank you.
And thank you everyone else for joining us this Friday morning on The Huddle. We're here again live Friday morning, but we're also back next Friday with another amazing guest, and Shayna Humphreys. And we'll give you more information on her as we get near. But thank you to Amazon for our YouTube, Facebook, Roku, Apple TV, and most importantly, our key platform out of Phoenix, Arizona, E360 TV. Catch us on Monday with an amazing guest on Faith Family Focus. And again, this is The Huddle presented by Faith Family Focus. Our goal is to enter the huddle and leave knowing we've grown within these 60 minutes. Our stories are our power, and every Friday we hope to share an amazing guest with you. We'll see you guys on Monday. Have a good weekend.